It's 1976, and one of the world's biggest rock stars raises his arm in what looks exactly like a Nazi salute. Cameras capture everything, fans watch in horror, and the image spreads like wildfire. That rock star was David Bowie, and what led him to that moment reveals a darker story than anyone imagined. Most people know Bowie as the chameleon of rock, the alien who fell to earth and changed music forever. But behind the glitter and the personas lurks something far more complex. A man who couldn't tell where he ended and his characters began. A performer so consumed by his own creations that he nearly lost himself completely. And in 1976, the world got a glimpse of just how far he'd fallen. The cracks started showing early, when Bowie was just a kid in school and a fight with his friend George Underwood changed everything. One punch, one scratched pupil, 4 months of surgeries that couldn't fix the damage. His left eye remained permanently dilated, giving him that otherworldly stare everyone would later recognize. But here's what most people don't know. That injury messed with his depth perception and made him see the world differently than everyone else, literally. The physical difference became a metaphor for how disconnected he'd always feel from normal life. His half-brother Terry Burns didn't help matters since Terry suffered from schizophrenia and spent a lot of time away from home in treatment. But when he was around, he opened Bowie's mind to the occult, beat poetry, and ideas that push boundaries. He watched his brother struggle with reality and saw how the mind could fracture and lose its grip. He had no idea he'd face similar battles years later, and the difference was that Bowie's came from personas he created himself. Terry's illness was involuntary, but Bowie's would be self-inflicted and born from his need to become someone other than David Jones from suburban London. Then there's the part of Bowie's life that never quite made sense to the public, his sexuality. In 1972, he announced he was gay, which was revolutionary for the time, except it wasn't the whole truth, because behind closed doors, Bowie was sleeping with everyone, men and women and whoever caught his eye. He had a decade-long relationship with actress Dana Gillespie starting when he was 17 and she was 14. He fell hard for male dancer Lindsay Kemp, who later said their connection was instant and electric. But Bowie couldn't stay faithful, and Kemp discovered Bowie was sleeping with a woman on the side, which ended things romantically. The pattern continued with Hermione Farthingale, a dancer Bowie met through Kemp, who he moved in with and seemed serious about. But Bowie admitted later it was his fault when she left for Norway to film a movie because he couldn't keep it zipped, his words. Then came the marriage that shocked everyone who knew the truth. When Mary Angela Barnett married Bowie in 1970, just a year after they met. Sounds romantic until you hear what she revealed decades later. That, according to Angela, Bowie told her straight up before the wedding that he was not really in love with her. She married him anyway, so she could get a work permit, and they had an open marriage because Bowie was never going to be monogamous. She described living with him as like living with the blowtorch, and they had one son together, initially named Zoe, who now goes by Duncan Jones. But none of that personal chaos mattered once Ziggy Stardust arrived in 1972, when Bowie unveiled his most famous creation, an androgynous alien rock star from Mars with bright red hair and psychedelic costumes. And the character was brilliant, a mix of Iggy Pop and Lou Reed designed to be the ultimate pop idol, and audiences lost their minds. Finally, after years of failed bands and flopped albums, Bowie hit the jackpot, and the single Starman became massive. He'd spent the previous years desperately jumping from band to band, the Conrads, the King Bees, the Manish Boys, the Lower Third, never finding the right fit. Even his 1967 solo debut bombed so badly, he considered abandoning music entirely to become a Buddhist monk. But his teacher ultimately told him that he didn't want to be Buddhist and should follow music. Here's where things got dangerous though, because Bowie wasn't just playing Ziggy on stage, he became Ziggy, did interviews as Ziggy, lived as Ziggy, and the line between David and Ziggy blurred until it disappeared completely. Bowie later admitted he had serious doubts about his sanity during this period because Ziggy wouldn't leave him alone. The character haunted him even when he tried to step away. And after a year of non-stop touring and living as someone else, Bowie knew he had to end it. In July 1973, he shocked fans by announcing his retirement on stage at London's Hammersmith Odeon. The Spiders from Mars broke up, and Ziggy was done. But Bowie wasn't done with personas. He just needed a new one. And the next character he created nearly destroyed him. Enter the Thin White Duke, because by 1974, Bowie had moved to America and his substance use had spiraled into a full addiction. He barely ate, his body became skeletal, and his mind started fracturing. When he recorded the album Station to Station, he barely slept, and later said he only remembered flashes of making it. The drugs consumed him, the Duke consumed him, and he couldn't separate himself from this cold, emotionless character he'd created. He joked that his live album from this era should have been called David Bowie is Alive and Well and Living Only in Theory.
And that's when the really problematic stuff started happening, because during the tour for Station to Station, Bowie kept making statements that praised World War II Germany. He appeared with paraphernalia that raised eyebrows, and people started whispering about what he was doing. Then came the Victoria Station incident. Cameras caught Bowie mid-wave, but it wasn't just a wave. His arm extended straight out, and the angle looked exactly like a Nazi salute. The image spread everywhere, fans were disgusted, and critics condemned him. Bowie later claimed it was all because of his addiction and the persona he had adopted, that the thin white Duke had taken over completely, and Bowie had lost control of his own actions. He blamed the substances, and he blamed the character, but the damage was done. By August 1976, Bowie hit rock bottom and couldn't take it anymore, so he fled to Germany with his old friend Iggy Pop, who was battling his own demons. Together, they tried to get clean and create music away from the madness, and Bowie produced 3 albums in Berlin that became known as the Berlin Trilogy. More importantly, he finally escaped the addiction, and when he toured again, it was the first time in years he'd been on stage without substances. His marriage to Angela finally ended around this time too, and they divorced in 1980, closing a chapter on what had never really been a real marriage anyway. But even with the chaos behind him, one question still haunted Bowie about who he really was. The sexuality question never went away because in 1983, he told the press that announcing he was gay in 1972 was the biggest mistake he'd ever made. He claimed he'd always been a closet heterosexual, which confused everyone. After years of openly discussing his bisexuality and relationships with men, suddenly he was straight and people didn't know what to believe. Then in 2022, he changed his story again and said being open about his bisexuality wasn't a mistake in Europe, but it made things harder in America. He admitted he had no problem with people knowing, but never wanted to be a representative for any group because he just wanted to sing. So which was the truth? And the answer seems to be that Bowie himself never fully settled on one answer. In 1990, everything changed when he met supermodel Iman, and he later said he was naming their future children the night they met because it was that immediate. They married in 1992 and had a daughter together, and for the first time in his life, Bowie seemed genuinely settled. No more open marriages, no more chaos, and his success continued through the 80s and 90s. Let's Dance in 1983 became his biggest commercial hit, and he starred in the cult classic Labyrinth, where he wrote 5 original songs for it. But even in his happiest years, Bowie kept secrets, because in mid-2014, doctors diagnosed him with liver cancer. He told almost no one, and kept working on music and kept creating. On January 8, 2016, his 69th birthday, he released his final album, Black Star, and the songs were haunting and filled with references to mortality. Fans thought it was just another artistic phase and had no idea it was a goodbye. 2 days later, he was gone. David Bowie spent his entire life creating personas, changing identities, and reinventing himself. He was gay, then bisexual, then straight, then bisexual again. He was Ziggy, then the Thin White Duke, then just David. He was addicted, then clean, married for convenience, then married for love. And he made a gesture that looked like a Nazi salute, then spent years explaining it away. Through it all, one thing remained constant: that nobody, not even Bowie himself, could pin down exactly who he was. Maybe that was the point, that Bowie was always performing and always searching and never quite finding himself because there was no single self to find. He contained contradictions and mysteries that he took to his grave. And the man who fell to earth never really landed. He just kept transforming until the very end and left us to wonder which version, if any, was real. Behind all those personas and all that glitter, there might not have been a fixed identity at all, just a performer who became so good at being other people that the original David Jones got lost somewhere along the way.